We want to know in Christian concept of God, in which how is God like in heaven? So tell me now, how is God like in heaven? You are running away. How is God like in heaven? Why are you running away? How is God like in heaven? I want to know.
How is like God in heaven?
No, you haven't. How is God in heaven like?
No,
tell me.
You're going to address our
Can you see God in heaven?
Mansur, we already addressed this earlier.
No, you haven't. You have not.
No, we did because
no.
we mentioned
Clarify to me. Clarify to me. Clarify to me.
Now we're going to keep.
What is God in heaven? What is God in heaven?
Mansur,
hello?
And Mansur's not
what is God in heaven?
Responding to what I just
I'm
said
bring back to the
so
question.
There's
no running away. There is no running away. Don't run away. God in heaven in Christianity is what? It doesn't exist.
According to theology, it's the same reason why in the Bible when it says God is a consuming fire, we don't say God is a Bunsen burner, because God can't be a consuming fire and someone with fingers that sits on a throne that has a bum and does all this. That's not what it means. It's just an equivocal use.
Does God have a throne?
Right? Yes, God has
Is that
a
metaphorical?
Throne. Okay, the way that we understand that is that when you see God on his throne, what you are seeing.
I'm asking about the throne, not about God.
Yeah. What you're seeing is the effects of God's act in creation. Now, you're not seeing the literal divine essence in creation.
I didn't ask you about God. Is the throne metaphorical or literal?
The throne is a literal thing.
Okay.
So
let's understand that. God has a throne which is literal.
Yes.
Yeah? In the day of judgment, would there be, in the day of judgment, when the world come to an end, God has a throne.
Yes.
God is sitting on the throne and someone on his right hand side, as the Bible describes.
Yes.
The throne is literal.
Okay, so here's how
is the throne literal?
Okay, it's more nuanced than that, okay? So when you actually read the passage, it says that God is on his throne and the Lamb of God is on his right hand side. We don't understand that to mean that God has a physical bum.
I'm not talking about God. You keep missing my point.
Yeah,
I'm talking about the throne.
Is the throne physical? So I'm elucidating the point further to you so we can understand the
But talk about the throne.
Yeah, because God is on the throne. So in order to understand the throne, we have to understand God who sits on it, right?
No, I want to know, is the throne literal?
Yeah, the throne is literal, but God sitting on the throne, that is what we would call the effects of God's act. What you're seeing is...
Explain to me what it means. I don't understand what you mean by God sitting on the throne.
Okay, so for example, creation, right? Everything here is an effect of God's act of creation, right? Now, God can make effects through his act. When we're in heaven, what we're going to see is, instead of seeing the divine essence of God, we're going to see the effects of his act in motion, which resembles movement, which is why we say that we are seeing God. His spiritual presence is there on the throne, in that his effects of his act are there.
Can you see
God?
No,
you can't see the divine essence of God.
I'm talking God. Can you see God?
You can't see God's divine essence.
I'm not saying what essence or anything. I'm simply asking you a question.
Yeah, it's more nuanced than that.
Can you see God in heaven?
Yeah, you can't see God's divine essence. You can see the effects of his act. It's more
God, is God existent?
Yes.
God exists.
Yes.
Is God seeable in heaven?
God's effects are seeable in heaven. God's essence.
I'm not talking about God's effects.
Because it's more nuanced.
I'm talking about directly about God.
Yeah, okay. When we're talking
Can you see God in heaven?
Okay, Mansur, when we're talking directly about God, we're talking about the essence of God, right?
I'm talking about God as he is.
Okay, Mansur, it's more...
God as he is.
Yeah, but Mansur, you understand...
Does God have a form?
Wait, Mansur, you understand it's more nuanced than that, right?
Look, I know your metaphysical jargon as you're trying to explain. Maybe I don't. Okay, maybe I don't. Does God have a form?
Okay, Mansur.
Does God have a form?
God has an immaterial form. God is identical to form.
What do you mean by that?
Form just refers to essence.
What do you mean by essence? Don't be tautological. You said essence and form. What do you mean by form and what do you mean by essence?
Okay. Essence refers to a thing which exists, right? And when we understand...
What is a thing?
Okay, for example, that tree over there is a thing.
What is a... Okay, you're explaining. Thing. Okay.
That tree over there is a thing.
Why is that
So
a thing?
That tree.
Hang on. Why is that a
Because it has
thing?
an act of existence.
Yeah.
No.
in
Why
reality.
is that a thing?
It has an act of
It's a
existence.
Stop.
thing.
Why is that a
exists.
thing?
It's a thing
It
because it
exists. That's why it's a
exists.
thing.
No. We talked about existence.
Mansur.
Why is that a thing that exists?
Mansur, we're going off
What
topic to
is
the throne
of
now.
that thing? What is in that
Mansur,
thing
you're
that
trying
it
to take
exists?
off topic to the throne. We're trying to take it off topic to the throne.
No, I want to know whether you know what God is. So you talk about God as something that doesn't exist in reality.
Okay, do that.
Okay.
Okay, look. This is how we understand the world. We are basically.
Are you talking about God or the world?
Talking about God, and then we're going to go. So
No, talk about the God.
Yes. God is a part. God created the world, right? So reality exists. And what it's a particular view called hylomorphism, which basically everything is form and matter. That's it. So everything has a form, and it has a material that the matter conforms to.
Explain to me what you mean by form.
Okay, so form is going to be called the principle of intelligibility. It's going to be the particular genus, at least for example in created things, and the material.
This mic, does it have a form? What do you mean by form?
The form is going to be, for example, the shape, right? The liquidity, the essence of the thing, and then the material is going to be literally the plastic or the I don't know whatever it's termed.
Okay.
Now in all.
So I understood your definitions of form.
Hold on.
Good.
Just to give you a bit more things. Every created item has what we call act and potency. Now I'll tell you this. Potency is to act, right? As accidents are to form. So everything has a form, they have accidents that flow from the form. Okay? That's how we understand the world, that's how we understand reality. The point is that God has no potency. Therefore he has no material.
What do you mean by potency again?
Potency is, for example, the possibility for something to be actualized, right? So, for example, I'll give you a really easy example. If I have a kettle, okay, and the kettle's not on the stove, the kettle is actually cold, but potentially hot. When I take the kettle and I put it on the stove the potency in the stove has been moved from potential to actuality. In the kettle now, it's actually hot and now potentially cold. All created things have this.
And you said God doesn't have
God
potentiality.
has no potentiality. Why? Because he has no matter.
No what?
No matter, no material. God has no material.
What does God have? Not what doesn't he have. What does he have?
When we speak about God possessing things, let's be very
No.
clear and very nuanced.
You said he doesn't have X, Y, and Z. But what does he have?
Hold on a second. When we speak about God possessing things, we have to be
I didn't say
very-
possess.
Having something is to possess something.
Okay, fair enough.
Okay, so let's carry on. When we speak about these things, we have to be very nuanced.
Does God possess anything?
If you want me to answer your question, I can
I'm
answer.
clarifying that question to me. Does God possess anything?
God does possess things. But when we talk about God possessing things, we mean it in a very specific way. God doesn't possess it in a created sense. For example, I possess hands.
No, before God created
Hold on a
anything,
second.
does he possess
You don't
anything?
want to listen to my
No,
answer.
I'm making it simple for you.
No, I'm making it simple for you
Before
because you don't
God created,
understand this.
no,
It's very
I'm making it
complex.
simple for
I'm
you.
making it simple for you.
Before
Stop.
God created anything,
Stop.
does God possess anything?
Of course, but I'm trying to.
What does he
explain-
possess?
You've asked me this question 4 times. I've tried to respond.
How many times have I asked you a question?
About 3 or 4 times.
No.
You haven't?
You keep-
How many times?
you keep-
You tell me. How many times?
I asked you
Oh,
this
so
one.
you can't tell me either. So let's get back to
I'm
the
just
point.
telling you.
Okay, so stop.
I
So when we
asked
talk
you
about God
and
possessing-
repeated my question
when we
again.
talk
That's
about God
wise.
possessing things, you have to make a distinction between the way in which we possess things and the way in which God possesses things.
Yeah, what does he
Remember,
possess?
Remember, under the doctrine of divine simplicity, everything that's predicated to God is God. So God doesn't have it in a created way. It's not composed.
God
in
is.
It's not some property that exists like some bundle of things. What we talk about when God possesses things, we're talking about things that are within God's essence itself. But He is identical to those things. So, for example, God is love. When you say God has love,
What is love?
God is love.
No, what is love? What is love?
Love.
What is love?
Love is a reciprocal thing. Love is a, in a sense.
God is.
No, what is love?
Love is God's will for the good.
Perfect. That's a
Does God have will?
God is will. Yeah, God is will itself.
Sorry.
We have to,
Stop.
listen.
Slow down.
Anything that-
Slow down. You're just jumping.
I'm not jumping. I'm not jumping.
God
I'm being
is
very
will.
simple. God, look,
Yes.
anything we predicate to God is God. The reason why this is true is that if we do not say this, hold on, if we do not say this, then we will be holding an alternative position, which is what we call divine complexity. It would be to say that all of the things that God has are parts in God. that they are composed in God.
And that's why the Sunni position of Allah
there are
having
two
distinct
positions.
Wrong
attributes.
concept of parts.
You don't know what you're talking about.
You don't know. That's why I'm saying you were earlier talking about time. No, sorry about that. You are having earlier we are having a discussion with Brother Subur.
I think I remember you.
No, you do not know. You do not know time.
I don't know time.
You are talking about. No.
Yo, let him finish.
What's the A and B for the time?
Let me say. Stop. I have said that it is not necessary. You have not said that. Let me say why it is not necessary. Because you are projecting your concept towards God. Yeah.
What do you mean?
How are you? No. Let me say, you are projecting your concept of indivisibility, divisibility, and divisibility and indivisibility. Yeah.
So when we predicate,
no, you cannot. No, you are.
When we
this
talk
is
about
material
predications.
things. No, these concepts are coming into your head from material things. God is something you cannot comprehend in the real.
No one is saying that you comprehend the devices.
No.
I'm going to talk about predications.
But yet you can represent something like you are defining a God in a sense that will contradict, that will create contradiction in terms of definition. Likewise, yes. Because
That's what you just said.
yes.
Yes, I understand. Look, when we
Yes,
predicate
yes,
things,
you are saying that because you have
Wait,
removed
I'm
the-
sorry, bro. You jumped in the
First of all,
convo.
No, it's important because he knows exactly what he's talking about. When we talk,
also you're done.
No, he has
no,
he
I know he knows more than me. So I'm allowing him to speak.
Okay, wait, brother. What's your name?
I'm not good. My name is Gomshar.
Nice to meet you. I'm
Yeah.
Thomas. Nice
Yeah,
to
yeah,
meet you.
Thomas, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
what?
Sure.
Just briefly summarize for me, please. What's your argument against free
My
thinking?
argument is like that he is not defining his terms. My first problem is that he is arguing going circular and circular without defining with implicit definitions. He is assuming something, but he is hiding that. But if he expresses that explicitly, then we can pinpoint that where he is making wrong in his judgment.
Can you
Yeah,
wait?
yeah.
Can you say which terms are being
He is
defined?
using a premise which is not well defined. Now, then he is not
Can
well
you say
versed
the terms
in.
he's not defining?
No, that's why I was having
he's
this
not
discussion that
defining
he
his
is
terms, so let's
like
switch one.
saying that if God possesses this, if God is will, and then God is love kind of thing, and he says that if it is defined from God, it becomes part. I mean,
Yes.
this concept, you are having this
Okay,
concept,
okay,
you are having this concept from your material world, and you are saying that, you know what quantum is? No, you do.
Wait.
Oliver, you are talking
Wait,
about quantum mechanics.
Can I explain it to you? Because I know this
Why I am talking this? Because Oliver was talking about infinite regression, and he was using modal universes. No, earlier conversation.
Another occasion.
Another
why are you bringing it up here? I was just relevant.
yeah, so you
Just to show you how inconsistent you may be.
That's why. That's why you are having the arrogance to portray yourself that you understand everything of quantum mechanics,
Wait, can
everything
I-
of
can I-
time,
can I just
and you are
interrupt for 1 second?
using concept of time, and you are arguing with this concept of time.
Wait,
and
brother, we're not talking
saying-
about time right now.
No, I am giving the example that how he is incapable of
Okay, can you please talk about what we're talking about right now?
defining properly the terms he is using in his premises.
Okay.
No, it does not matter.
I asked you earlier.
No,
right?
no,
Wait.
yeah,
You
yeah.
need to allow people to
Yeah,
speak.
yeah.
I asked you earlier, right? I asked you what terms is he using that he's not defining in this debate here, not a previous one.
No, he is like that's just Brother Mansur has said that he has not defined love, and he is not defining will,
he
and then he is claiming that it cannot.
He defined love earlier as
Why he-
love
he can-
earlier
why
as
he
God's
can-
will.
we-
Wait, brother.
yeah.
He defined love earlier as God's will for the good, right? If you want him to define will, I'm sure he's going to define that to you as God's rational appetite towards the good, right? That's what he's going to define that to. So now that the terms are explained, let us break down to you why it's dangerous if you separate, not separate, but make distinct the attributes of God. I'll break this down to both of them, okay? In metaphysics, there's something called mereology, which is the study of parts and their relationships to wholes. Now, what a part is something which is less than a whole, right? So for example, my pinky finger is less than the whole of my hand, therefore it's a part of my hand, right? But also we understand parts don't have to be physical things, right? There can be metaphysical parts, like powers, right? Superman has the power of flight, but that's not the whole of Superman, so it's a part of it. Let me just finish, right? So the problem is if you say Allah's attributes are distinct from each other, you can't say that they're identical to the whole of Allah, right? Otherwise those attributes would be identical to each other. But if they're less than the whole of God, then definitionally,
the less and whole doesn't come in here.
are what a part is. Okay?
So let me say, so your metaphysical theory, wherever you are applying your principle, mathematics, you have to first see that whether it is applicable to God.
Yes, it is.
No, because that's why I was saying that your theory of part and not part whole is not applicable to God. God is completely different concept. You cannot comprehend in the sense, but you can still represent with your concept a little bit. It's comprehension. Like I have said, the quantum mechanics. You cannot comprehend quantum real. Still, you can use the classical language to express it. Like a thing can be particle and the wave at the same time, but your concept of particle is like something is confined in space, and wave is like something is spreading. But you say that you I'm just giving an example. I am giving an example how you cannot apply your concepts towards God.
Did you understand that point?
Yeah, I understand his point. Okay. The problem with his point is this, right? You're saying that God is so far beyond concepts that we can't apply them to him. But the problem is someone can use that same point to just say that you can't say anything at all about God.
No, that's why I have said that still you can represent like quantum particles.
I'm not finished.
Yes.
We can still apply certain principles that we know about reality to certain quantum particles and how quantum mechanics works, right? Similarly with God, we can apply principles about reality to God. For example, I've seen in videos that you've used arguments to show that an immaterial God exists, right? Because we can use natural reasoning to come to the conclusion that God immaterially exists. But God isn't beyond the principles of just natural reasoning like that, is he? Because we can apply those also to God. And if you say that he's beyond those principles, not only are you saying you can't reason anything about God, but then nothing is...
He didn't say that.
We can use a reason to reach at God, conclusion of God. But as we reach about the qualities of God, which is reflected in His creation effect, we can use a reason up to that point. But we cannot use a reason to this. I mean, how these are residing. How these are residing in same entity or not. We cannot use a reason because it goes beyond our reason.
Okay.
The point, but like that's why I have given example of quantum mechanics.
Yes. So
what I am giving that even a material particle is showing this kind of incapability of our language.
Yeah. Can I respond to that?
Yeah.
Okay, so the problem with that, right, is you're saying we can apply reasoning to God at this point, but we can't at this point. Your problem is that you have an arbitrary cutoff point as to when you can apply reason to God.
It is not arbitrary.
Reason. Wait, I'm not finished.
Reason will tell you that I cannot go beyond this. Reason will tell you. It is not arbitrary. It is based on the principle of reasoning. Because I am living the domain. Every reason or every premise is defined within a certain boundary or limitation. You know. But
do you understand that?
Yeah.
Everything is limited in scope, even reasoning.
I agree.
You can't go beyond that by definition.
Wait. I agree everything is limited in its scope. However, with mereology as a principle, this is still applicable to God, like you would admit that many other principles are. So if you want to say some principles are applicable to God and some are not, you're going to have to give a philosophical reason as to why you're doing that. If not, if not, then it is just an arbitrary cutoff point, which is what
it's
Muslim philosophers have really dealt with this, and I'm sure you should have taken time to read Muslim philosophers on this issue, and where some of the Muslim philosophers went astray because they went beyond the limits of the scope, and why they need to have the boundary within the scope in which they understand. That's why I asked you, your friend, if God told you something, like I have literally 2 eyes, you say, I would not believe in it. So this shows your metaphysical presupposition is such that you will even reject God, what he says about himself.
Yes.
That's why I'm saying we can only go as far as God describes himself, who he is. If God but if God defines or informs us about what he is, we accept it.
Yes.
You cannot then say, no, I reject you, God. You cannot be like that, because metaphysically I have a principle in which, I can only apply analogical predication. You cannot be that.
Okay.
So, one second. The question now is, in the hereafter, you say you cannot see God. Okay. How would you feel God's presence? In what tools are you going to use to feel God's presence?
Okay, the way in which one feels God's presence is God's acts affecting our emotional state. That's how you feel God's presence. Now, with what you said earlier...
Let's talk about heaven. It's important. I want to know how you picture God in heaven. Very important. I want to know. I want to know how you picture God in heaven.
You said earlier.
No, please. In heaven. Because the divine simplicists are not interested in the heavenly concept of God. So tell me about God in heaven.
I'm going to address your whole statement.
Heavenly concept of God.
You made a criticism on Rico that he would deny certain things.
He said so himself.
God on metaphysical
I didn't say that. He said so himself.
Okay, now he says he would deny certain things about God on logic alone.
Even God said so.
I'm sure that you believe that the Trinity is an illogical thing, right? So if God revealed himself to you as one, you would say that's illogical. Would you accept God as a Trinity?
Let me tell you something. Let me answer. I'm answering. If God described himself exactly and we are sure that God said so, we accept it.
So you would accept anything about God?
Let me. My second part of the question. God created us with this rational faculty, and he's not going to tell us something that goes against our rational faculty about himself, because there's many things about God that we cannot comprehend. The things that we can comprehend is something that is in line and in tune with our rational faculty. So whatever God describes about himself will always in line with our rational understanding of who he is. It will never contradict. That means, let me finish. That means any concepts from any religion that goes against our rational understanding and it says it's contradictory, you would say God has given us this faculty to reject this concept because it cannot be from him. So, God, if he told us about himself, we accept it. But he will never tell something which he has given us a tool to understand him and go against that tool.
Negative definition, especially negative definition. Let me just God is not like that. God is not like this. This definition.
Conversation later, but let me just respond.
Did you understand, boy?
I understand your point, but there's a big problem that I have with your Aqidah, right? And it sounds like you're an Afari from your Aqidah. So I'm going to address that position on the non-cognitive statements.
What did I say that you don't agree with?
Okay, what I disagree with is you say that when God describes himself a certain way, you just accept that and you don't dig into the further meaning. The problem,
I didn't say that. Strawmanning again. I never used the word further meaning.
Don't go into the further
I didn't say further meaning at all.
Okay, so
use the words that I use.
You disagree with Ahmed ibn Hanbal when he says that?
Wait. What you're doing is, you're not having a sincere, genuine conversation. I said, whatever God reveals about himself, we accept it. Did I say anything else? Did I add or take away anything? I said no.
Okay, good.
Listen, no, stop. You will ask.
Okay.
But do not strawman me because you want to somehow put your position.
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Wait. What I said is, God created us with our rational faculty.
Yes.
Would God say then things that we will find contradictory? Is God capable of communicating things that we understand? Or is he going to communicate things that will be contradictory and he wants us to understand?
Okay. I don't think that God is going to communicate to you things which are absolutely unsolvable contradictions, because that goes against the laws of logic. For example, the law of non-contradiction. But you said earlier that you don't hold into, that you don't go further into the attributes.
I didn't say anything about further or less. Why are you strawmanning me all the time?
Mansur, I asked you, I said to you...
Do you accept what I just said?
Let me finish my statement.
Finish your statement.
I said to you that you don't delve deeper into the attributes of Allah. And then
when did I say that?
And then you corrected me and you said that's not what you said. So if I were to ask you, what does it mean that Allah has two right hands? Would you say...
We know exactly what it means.
Okay, what does it mean?
Yeah. He has two hands that befits His Majesty, and they are unlike anything of the creation.
Okay.
Let me clarify it. Let me clarify. In a way. Hands, we know hands. You've got hands. This has got hands of a clock and many things, right? We know what hands means. So Allah describes that He has hands, but they're unlike, hear the word, they're unlike anything of the created domain. So hands God has, which befits His Majesty. We do not make resemblance to anything of the creation. We do not deny them. We do not interpret them away. That's exactly our position. Does it make sense to you?
Yes. Okay. Let me
Tell me
ask you.
what makes sense to you. Tell me, what did I just say?
You're saying that Allah has hands, absolutely unlike creation. You can have physical hands. Cocks can have hands, but in a more metaphorical sense. And the way in which you understand Allah's hands is that He has hands, they're two right hands, and the way in which you understand them is that it's absolutely beyond His creation and it's what befits His Majesty.
I didn't say beyond His creation. None of I used the word beyond.
Sorry, you said it's unlike.
It's unlike the creation.
We don't
creation
need to
has
mix
hands,
words.
many hands we know in creation.
Let me ask you,
Allah's hands are unlike them.
Mansur, let me ask you something then.
Yeah.
Your understanding of Allah's hands, is that understanding created?
What do you mean? Every understanding is created because you are a creation.
Okay, so then your understanding of Allah's hands, since they're unlike creation, is unlike Allah's hands.
I don't understand your question.
Okay.
You're speaking gibberish.
Okay. You said, premise one, Allah's hands...
I didn't give you any argument, premise one and two.
Because
Don't strum me again.
I'm drawing inferences from what you
So
said.
don't give me a premise which I didn't even put an argument for.
It's called a reductio ad
And you shut up.
No, I won't.
Then the discussion is over. If you don't make him quiet, then we will not continue the discussion. No. You tell him to stop. Look, how long have I been speaking to you in this conversation?
Mansur,
Stop. How long have I been talking?
Okay, Mansur, I respect...
More than an hour? Probably 2 hours?
Can we have a civil conversation?
When this guy comes along and start talking, it's irritating.
Okay.
Tell him to shut up and I can continue.
Let's all have a civil conversation.
Thank you.
No one in the crowd interrupt because this is a civil conversation.
Excellent.
Ever since it's been
Tell him to shut up.
It's been respectful. Okay.
No, tell him to shut up. Tell him to shut up. Shut up, please.
I'm going to address the crowd and say to the crowd that I would like us to just only be the two interjectors in the conversation.
Continue.
Now, you objected to what I said by saying that in me drawing premises, it's wrong.
I said I didn't understand what you're talking about.
Okay, yeah.
Because I wasn't making an argument.
Mansur, that's why you have to wait for me to finish the statement.
Excuse me.
Right?
When does premise comes along? When you're making an argument, right? Did I make an argument?
Mansur, can I finish my argument?
Wait, did I make an argument?
No, you didn't.
Then where does the premise comes in?
Okay, I'm going to explain that.
Okay, go ahead.
What I'm doing is called a reductio ad absurdum. When you take points that your opponent makes and then you draw from it that it leads to an incoherent syllogism, right? So what Mansur just said earlier is that Allah's hands are absolutely unlike creation. He also affirms that he understands Allah's hands. And then I asked him, is your understanding of Allah's hands created? So since Allah's hands are absolutely unlike creation, but Mansur's understanding of Allah's hands is created, then his understanding of Allah's hands is absolutely unlike how they really are, and thus you can't describe God. This is the problem with his position.
It doesn't follow.
Philosophically bankrupt.
You mean nonsensical argument. Listen.
Okay, address the
whatever analogies you bring about Allah's hands to, I am saying simply, in any way you trying to describe, they will be unlike, dissimilar to anything that you can imagine. The fact that Allah exists, the fact that you exist, your existence and Allah's existence are not identical. There are going to be dissimilarities, right? So it doesn't matter what you think, what comes in your mind, they're never going to be identical. Likewise, Allah in His reality, He exists with His attributes. But His attributes are not identical to us. They're unlike us. They might have some similarities by name, for example, hand and hand. They're only similar by names. But in terms of the reality, they are totally different.
Okay.
Wait. So now, having explained to our position, which is sensible, rational, reasonable, logical, I want to go back to the Christian concept of heaven. Let me finish. No. We want to know about the Christian concept of heaven. Hang on. I didn't switch the topic. You switched it. We want to know in Christian concept of God, in which how is God like in heaven? So tell me now, how is God like in heaven? You are running away. How is God like in heaven? Why are you running away? How is God like in heaven? I want to know.
How is that God in heaven?
No, you haven't. How is God in heaven like?
No,
tell me.
You're going to address our
Can you see God in heaven?
Mansur, we already addressed this earlier.
No, you haven't. You have not.
No, we did because we
no,
mentioned
clarify to me. Clarify to me.
Now we're going to keep.
What is God in heaven? What is God in heaven?
Mansur,
Hello?
And Mansur's not
What is God in
actually
heaven?
responding to what I just
I'm
said
bringing
him.
back to the
So
question.
Mansur doubled
There's
down
no running
on his
away.
statement
There is
again.
no running away.
And Mansur just
Don't run
said-
away.
Mansur just
God
said
in heaven in
that Allah
Christianity
absolutely
is what? It doesn't
dissimilar
exist.
to his creation.
Excuse
If
me.
he is absolutely
Does
dissimilar
God
to his
exist in heaven?
creation, Then your created understanding is absolutely dissimilar to him. Congratulations, you can't understand God in your theology, Mansur. That's the problem.
Do you have, hang on.
Allah is absolutely
Hang on.
dissimilar
Wait.
to creation.
Wait.
Our understandings are created, therefore Allah is absolutely unlike our understanding.
This is a basic thing.
If Allah is unlike our understanding of most merciful, then we can't describe Allah's attribute of most merciful.
False. I'll tell you why it's
and
false.
therefore we can't describe
I'll tell you why it's
Allah.
false.
Now Mansur,
I'll tell you it's false.
Wait. I'm about
I'll tell
to
you it's
finish my
false.
statement.
Go
I'm
on,
about to
finish
finish
your
my
statement. I'll
Now,
tell you
when
how
we speak
illogical
of
you are.
God, when we speak of God,
Yeah.
there are three categories in which we can predicate of a thing. There's a univocal sense in which it's absolutely like God. Neither me or Mansur hold to this. There's an analogical sense in which something is similar or like God, which I hold to, but Mansur is saying Allah is completely dissimilar, so we can't hold to analogical predication. And then there is an equivocal usage when something is absolutely dissimilar to something. It's similar to if I were to say dogs bark and trees have bark. The usage of the word bark is equivocal. The problem is if Allah is actually absolutely unlike creation, or as you said, absolutely dissimilar in an absolute sense, then that means that you're using an equivocal usage. So the same way you're saying
that really
Allah
shows
has
you don't even
hands,
know what you're talking about.
It's the same way I'm saying dogs bark and trees have bark.
Yeah.
It's nonsensical.
That's what I'm saying. You don't have a clue what you're talking about. Let me tell you what I mean by that. Dogs bark and a tree has barks. These bark, the word has two different meanings.
That's the point, yeah.
Don't interrupt. Two different meanings. I didn't say when we're talking about hands that the meaning is different. Hands doesn't mean hands. I said hands do mean hands. So you do not even understand the Islamic position.
Okay.
Clearly not, because you're equivocating with what? Bark of a tree and barking of a dog when they have two different meanings altogether. I am saying hands, we know what it means. But in terms of how they are, because hands of a clock, hands of a human, hands of this creature, of that thing, they are different in terms of what the modality is of them. Allah also has hands. He says with his hands, he created Adam. He wrote the tablets, right? So it doesn't mean he used his ears to write the tablets. That would have been a false equivocation with dog barking and a tree having barks. We know what hands means, but we're saying the modality of how they are, the reality of these hands, they are not like identical to anything of the creation. This something that you need to get in your head because you do not even understand our position and you strawmanned it for all that time. I want to know, you believe God in heaven.
No, we're still
hang on, you don't interrupt. Don't interrupt. God in heaven in Christianity, he has a throne and someone's going to stand beside him. This someone now has a physical form, flesh. The human flesh of Jesus Christ, the second member of the Trinity, is going to remain forever. So God now has taken a form, human form. So it's a God-man. But the question is, how much of God is in that man? If God cannot be represented in any way, in any form, in any shape, in any way physically, materially, because what you mean by spiritual, I don't even understand, because even the spirits, I'm going to pray soon, inshallah. Right. So now, I want to know, what is God in heaven to you? You say God exists. What does it mean? How do you feel his existence? Does he have a form? And what do you mean by form? What do you mean by essence of God? So you need to explain to me, God has a throne and he's sitting on it. So I want to know who is sitting on it and how do we know who's sitting on the throne? How do you see, observe, feel, understand and experience that.
Okay, now notice that what Mansur is imploring here is what is known in logic as a red herring fallacy. He
He's not
can't
interested in
deal
answering.
with the argument to do
That's it.
with
We're
Allah
gonna
has
leave
to
this.
be unlike creation, so he's trying to switch it to a different argument.
Not switching, that was the same discussion. Same discussion, no. I'm interrupting you deliberately. I apologize for interrupting, but this was a discussion we started and you ran away to another topic. I brought you back to the topic. With all apologies, I brought you back to the topic.
polite to you, but I'm not going to allow red herring
But I am saying I brought you back to the topic. You ran away from the topic. That should be noted. Go back in the discussion. I discussed about this, about God in heaven, and you ran away from it.
May I speak?
We brought you back to
May I
it.
speak,
Answer.
May I speak?
On this
Okay.
topic.
To reiterate my statement, what Mansur said earlier on is a red herring fallacy.
very
The
interesting.
original premise of this discussion, right now that we're discussing, is how Mansur can simultaneously say Allah is completely one, dissimilar to his creation, which he later switched into using the language not identical.
He is
I'm
not
fine with that,
understood
but
the
he
No, he didn't understand it.
by saying
He's not getting
he's
the point,
completely
and it is a
dissimilar
basic
to
thing.
creation. And then Mansur said that his understandings of Allah's hands are created. The conclusion of that is that Mansur's understandings of Allah's hands are completely dissimilar to Allah, but he's trying to employ a red herring fallacy to get away from that. Now, if you rewind the recording,
Why are you so
earlier
disingenuous?
on
Why
into
are you
the
lying?
discussion,
Why are you lying?
You did employ a
Why
red
are you
herring
lying?
fallacy to get
No,
away
why are
from
you
it.
lying?
No one's lying. Let
Why
me
are you
finish my
lying?
statement. I didn't
Why are you
interrupt
lying?
Let me
I
finish my
interrupt you
statement.
deliberately.
Let me
Why are you
finish my
lying?
statement.
When someone
Let me
lies,
finish
I
my
will
statement.
call a spade a
Let me
spade.
finish my statement. You said
No,
Allah
I'm
is
not
completely
interested anymore.
dissimilar to
I'm not
creation.
interested. If
Let
you
me
stop
finish my
lying, I can
statement.
talk. If you
Let
keep on
me
lying,
finish
I'm not
my
going to talk.
statement. Let me
If you
finish
keep
my
on
statement.
lying, I will
Mansur,
stop
if you're gonna
talking
run
to
away
you.
from
Do we have an
debate
answer
by
to the
accusing someone
question?
of lying,
Otherwise,
then
we have
Because you
to-
lie.
No one lies.
We talked about-
Mansur,
Okay.
you're going to let me finish
Do
my
you have
statement.
any-
Finish your
Now, what
statement.
you did was a
Everyone's
red herring
listening.
fallacy.
Everyone's
What you
listening.
did was a red herring fallacy to try to change the topic of conversation from something that you clearly can't deal with in your philosophy. That's okay. Earlier on, if you
I
rewind the
hope
recording
this
back,
loco film
Mansur
is not going to
already
cut the conversation,
questioned us
because the
about
original
how we
conversation is
understand
about concept of God in heaven.
how we understand God in heaven. I already answered that by saying that we understand seeing the Father in heaven by seeing the effects of His act in creation.
What do you mean by
We're not
that?
literally
What do you mean by
seeing the
that?
essence of God.
What do you mean by that?
Now,
Explain.
We're not going to let him
No,
switch
explain.
it
Explain.
onto
What do you
a
mean by
red
that?
herring fallacy.
Explain.
What we're going to do is we're going to stay on the topic.
Oh, now he's not
of
interested.
how Allah
That's
is
so how
completely
weak you are
dissimilar
in
to His
defending your
creation.
theology.
So, no, that's how
You
weak
are so weak in
You're
defending
willing
your theology.
to employ a red
Are we
herring
out of
fallacy
date?
I
to
answered.
try to escape it.
I answered,
You didn't
explained, and he
answer it.
didn't click.
Because Mansur
You
says-
didn't even get it.
Mansur says
the
Allah is
negative
completely
definition.
dissimilar to His creation.
limitation.
Mansur also says that Allah's hands, when He understands it, is a created
You do not
understanding.
understand how language
so
is
therefore,
used.
Mansur's
You do not
understanding
understand
of
how
Allah's hands
language is used to
completely unlike
describe
Allah.
something.
Mansur
Look
can't
at me and
say
speak.
anything about his God.
Look at me and look at me and speak.
Because
Look
you
at me and
said the
speak.
statement that Allah's hands are absolutely
Why are you
similar
incapable
to
of
creation.
understanding the
That's
use of
the
Is there anything
Now
that you
you
can
may
understand
speak.
of? Okay, is there anything that you can understand of God?
Yes, you can analogically understand many
Hang on,
things.
hang on, hang on. So basically, whatever you understand about God is not a correct understanding.
What you understand about God is correct in the sense that there's a likeness that God leaves in His created effects to Him, but because you deny that, saying there's a complete dissimilance between the likeness of God to created things, you can't say the same answer as me. That's the problem.
You didn't even
Now,
get
we
it.
can
You
use
didn't even get it.
analogical predication
He doesn't still get
to say
it.
that
How many
God-
times have I explained to you? You don't get it. Are you listening?
repeat
Listen.
yourself.
I said God's existence and our existence,
Yes.
they're only similar. That means there are some similarities. Only similar by name, but not in reality. God's attributes of His mercy, your attribute of mercy, they are similar with names, only in names, but not in reality. So there is a similarity and a dissimilarity. When we say they're unlike, because the names are only that explain to us in terms of what He is. So when we say God is unlike something, it doesn't mean He is somehow not in any way He's like this. We explain to you. The language is there to help us understand. Otherwise, we can't say anything about God at all. We can't say anything because human beings are created. Our understanding is, because you bring him too much close to my.
Oh, sorry.
That's why, yeah. You don't need to bring that close, right? You don't need. It picks up. It's quite very good microphone, right? So when we talked about, you lied several times by saying, "Oh, I'm running away from the thing." The discussion was about what? The Christian concept of God in heaven, that God is a throne, and I ask you whether it's literal or not. And instead of dealing with this subject, because you don't even know how God is in heaven, you want to bring in your Islamic concept of God, which I explain. So we want to know, look, as a created human beings, God created this language. With this language, He taught us how to understand Him. So we understand God's existence, His attributes, His actions, through the language that He's created and gave us knowledge of. Okay? Allah says, Allamahul Bayan. He taught us speech. Right. With this understanding, God has told us He's not like us. So He is the way He describes Himself. A fool will only make God in his own understanding, rather than what God tells him. Because God, who is our creator, how can the creator fathom and comprehend God when He wasn't even, God, the creation wasn't even there? It's like an ant knowing exactly how you look like when it crawls on your hand. No, I'm not finished yet. Nonsense. The only way the human beings, created human beings, can understand the Creator is when the Creator tells us. But you're saying, even if the Creator tells us that He literally has two eyes that He sees with, ears that He hears with, you would say, I am not going to accept it unless it's X, Y, and Z metaphysical baggage that we believe in. That's the problem with Christian belief system. Jesus Christ, His disciples. Moses, His disciples and His people. They never believe in something like that. That's why in heaven, how do we expect God to be? A Christian God is, look at how Christian God is. In heaven there's a throne there. And the believers can see the throne, but they can't see anyone on the throne, sitting. They can see someone standing on the right-hand side who's flesh and blood. Because He took flesh and blood and He will have it forever and forever. Never go. But they're supposed to be the Son of God. And this one standing on the right hand of the throne is speaking to someone on the throne. And guess what? He's speaking to the throne, and what do you see on the throne? You see nothing. You see nothing. Do you hear anything? When the voice comes, where does the voice come from? Is the voice of God or something of the creation? God created the voice. What do you hear? Did Moses hear the creation of the voice of God, or did God really have an attribute of speech? When God speaks, does God really speak, or God created the speech and then you hear His speech? That's why the Christian belief concept in God does not make sense.
May I respond?
Yeah, see what we have to say.
So my response is, if you note earlier on in Mansur's statement, he said that Allah's attributes are only similar to Allah in name. If you remember when I described to him what an equivocal predication was, with bark, trees have bark, and dogs bark, that's literally an example of an equivocal predication, when things are only similar in regards to their names. Because the way that a dog barks is completely unlike the way that a tree has bark. That's the point. Mansur is saying that Allah's attributes, Allah's hand is only similar to the way hands. In the sense that it's the same name, hands. The problem with that is then that Allah's attributes become unintelligible because you're equivocally predicating attributes of Allah. Now, I agree with Mansur when he says this, that God is beyond a certain conception, that we can't completely understand everything about God. I agree with you on that, Mansur. But what I disagree with is I think, and the Christian theology passed down through the apostolic age agrees with, is that in understanding God, we can understand Him with a likeness to His created effects. And the way in which we understand His likeness to His created effects is a way in which we can employ analogical predication to God. So if I say, Mansur is a good man, and this is a good microphone, the term good is being used in a similar but not the exact same sense. This is the way in which we should understand God's attributes, but Mansur is employing an equivocal usage in which only it is similar by name. When you do that, you can't understand anything about God. That's the problem. And with regards to Mansur's last point about God being on a throne in heaven, the Christian understanding of God being on a throne in heaven, you can read the church fathers. St. Ambrose says God is not in time.
That God is not like this, God is not like this.
So how do we understand this? When God is on a throne in heaven, what we are seeing is we are seeing the effects of His act in creation. So we are seeing God through effects, but we are not seeing the literal divine.
So what are you
essence
seeing
of
on the throne?
God. That's what we're saying. When
What
we
are
say
you
God
seeing
is on the
then?
throne. Now,
What are you
Mansur,
seeing?
I would like you to
It's not what you
respond
don't
to
see,
both
what do you
points
see?
that I have raised. I would like you to respond to one,
Okay, one.
the equivocal predication in which you're using for Allah, and two, my response to your argument that we can't explain or describe how God shares a throne.
Okay. Firstly, you keep on deliberately, selectively misunderstanding and ignoring what we just explained to you. Your question about dog barking and tree has a bark, they are not even the same in meaning. I didn't say name and that's it. We know what name means. When I say hand, we know what hand means. So the meaning is there, understood, inshallah. We know what the meaning is there. So when you said like, oh, someone is good, Mansur is good, the microphone is good. This good has the same kind of meaning. Name with the same meaning. That's our Islamic understanding about the hands, the eyes, the face, the attributes of God. But you keep missing it. You keep missing the point. So you want to say, oh, you believe in that, but that's exactly what we're describing. We are describing our understanding of God is like that. But what we're saying is God is unlike anything of the creation. So you believe in a God in which there is a throne of God and God is sitting in there. Guess what? Who you see? Who do you see in there? Nothing. What do you see in there? Nothing. Who do you hear? Nothing. So the God that you have is a non-existent God on the throne, and then the Son of God, flesh and blood, is speaking to him. What we're saying is, there is God on the throne according to your belief, but you can't see him, you can't hear him. There is nothing, you can't communicate to him. When I ask you again and again, what do you see? Don't tell me what you don't see. What do you see? So we are saying, Islamically, our theology is something every human being with their common sense can understand. And here is our theology, our belief system. We talk about God as he described himself. We know about God as he described himself. We accept about God as he described himself. We don't say about God that he didn't say himself. We don't say God is an engineer, for example. God is a mathematician. God didn't say that. We will not falsely ascribe to God that God never described himself. If God rejected him saying that I am not like this, we will say God is not like that. So you cannot make God into your own brain box and saying God is like this because my metaphysical position tells me to believe God is like that. God is divinely simple. He only has one act and that's it. All his attributes, they're all identical. They're not different. God never said such a thing. Nowhere in the scripture God has mentioned this, either in the Torah or in the Gospels or in the Quran. We say God speaks about himself and we take that. The messengers, the prophets explains God's speech and we understand what they have explained, we accept it. You would not find in the scripture, Jewish or Christian, in which God is saying, I'm actually a metaphysical God, divinely simple. I don't have eyes or ears. I don't have hands or fingers. You won't find anything like that. Instead, you'll find God describing, as I quoted earlier, to Moses saying, you know, God is describing about his back parts, about his hands, about his face. God is describing all of that, saying how Moses will be able to see God. God will put his hand over his face. So as he moves along across this rock, he won't see his face and get destroyed, but God, he will see his back parts. None of this is metaphorical. It's all understood as Moses and his disciples and his people understood it. Peace be upon all these prophets. So those of you who are listening, people, because I want to conclude, I have to go in Maghrib prayer. As you can see so many times, my brothers reminded me the time is going to pray. What I'm saying is the Islamic concept of God being one and only, without any partners, without any son, daughter, without any brother, without an uncle, is something that a human mind and soul can understand and appreciate and accept. God being 5 in 20, 3 in million, 2 in 16, or 3 in 1 would not make any sense because it goes against God's own scripture that he talked about himself. It goes against the human rationality that God gave us to understand him. So in both grounds, the concept of Trinity, divine simplicity, is really false as understood demonstratively. But the concept of one God, one and only God, who has no partners, who is absolutely sovereign, absolutely independent, absolutely almighty, with no limitations, no deficiency. This is the God that you would able to accept, understand and believe. And that is belief explained in the Quran and in the language of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his hadith, his statements. Go and open up the Quran, people. Go and open up the Quran and you will see when the Quran describes God's oneness, his absolute sovereignty, that he is in control, rather than there's two of them or three of them, they listen to each other, they are, they somehow compromise with each other. None of that would make sense. So God having a son in whatever shape or form, and God being a core in whatever shape or form, you would know this is a deficiency to God. God is not a father of any man. God is not a mother. God is not an uncle or a brother. Excuse me, I'm going to finish and you can talk whatever you want to. What I'm saying is this. God describes who he is, one and only. To Moses, to Abraham, to Jacob, to Solomon, to Christ. And guess what? Instead of accepting that belief about God, you've made God into a hypothetical, philosophical construct which none of the prophets and messengers ever talked about. So if you want to believe in that God, it's up to you. You have the freedom to do so. But in the day of judgment, when God will ask you, I revealed about me to my prophets and messengers. I told you about me, but you didn't believe in me. Make sure you have an excuse in that time. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لكم.
Mansur,
You respond, but I have to go and pray.
Okay.
I'm going to go, but you respond.
Okay, first of all, I want to shake your hand because the discussion became more civilized towards the end. But secondly,
Because you are behaving.
I want to respond.
That's why.
Yeah, it's better to behave when it's just us two. But
Yeah.
I want to respond to a couple of points that Mansur made. Okay. Mansur tried to equivocate our two views to say that he also believes in analogical predication with regards to Allah. So this seems like he's backtracking on his previous points, however, when he says that Allah is absolutely dissimilar to creation. If he's saying that you can use analogical predication of God, then he's negating that point, and God is at least in some sense like creation, which is the point. My point is you can understand him through a likeness in his created effects. Point number two, Mansur said earlier, and if you noticed his articulation of Allah's hands, he said that he doesn't go too far into it. Okay, he says that Allah has hands, they're not physical, but we don't go into the howness. We don't go into...
I didn't even use the word
Allah has
physical.
hands in a way which befits His Majesty. There are two problems with this.
Don't put words in my
Number
mouth.
one is it's a non-cognitive statement to say that, because when you say that God has something in a way that befits His Majesty, but we can't describe what it is, then what you're saying is that this statement doesn't have intelligible meaning to it, which means that Allah's hands don't actually have an intelligible meaning which any Muslim can understand. So I could substitute the word hand for blah blah blah, and it would have the same meaning.
You can't.
Allah has two right blah blah blahs. Has the same meaning as hands because you can't define hands within your tradition. Furthermore, Mansur appeals to this is just the way that befits Allah's Majesty. This is what we call appealing to mystery.
Nope.
Now it's funny that when
Explained.
Trinitarians do this, Muslims have a really big problem with this. If a Trinitarian says God is a Trinity, and a Muslim says, okay, what do you mean by the term Trinity? And I say, we don't delve into the meaning. The Trinity is what befits God's Majesty. Mansur's going to say, no, that doesn't make any sense.
You haven't explained what you
But
can
Mansur
see.
does the same thing with Allah's hands. So the problem is if you're going to use that, you have this thing called a principle of implosion, that when you ask anyone else about their beliefs, they can always appeal to mystery and say, look, we don't go into the howness of how this thing works. It's just that we appeal to the mystery of how it works, which is fine if you want to say that. It's just not philosophically coherent, okay? Mansur also says that, as he described himself, we don't see about God what he doesn't say about himself. He also said that we don't say anything about God that he doesn't say about himself. The problem with this is it doesn't allow you to elucidate what God is through natural reasoning at all. Then you can't use natural reasoning and you're devoid of it. Furthermore, he says the Trinity goes against reasoning. If the Trinity goes against reasoning, and earlier on in this discussion, he was saying that Allah is beyond reasoning to a certain
Didn't say that.
extent,
Didn't say that.
did with the
Strawman argument again.
earlier on. If you
Lying.
say that, then a Christian can similarly say that. But the point is
Don't
that
strawman.
the Trinity doesn't go without reasoning. We can actually explain how God is a Trinity. Here's how it's done. God has one essence, and within this one essence is three really distinct subsistences. They don't have three really distinct wills, which is what Mansur was describing earlier on by trying to equivocate our view with having three gods. But that's what Mansur was trying to equivocate. Mansur also said that we can't understand the Trinity through what was passed down to the prophets. He implored Jesus as an example of these prophets. But Jesus in John chapter 5 verse 23, for example, says, "Honor me the same way that you honor my Father. If you do not honor the Father who sent the Son, then you are not honoring the Son." The problem with that is that you obviously can honor your parents. I can honor my mother and my father. I can't honor them in the same way that I honor God the Father, though. Why? Because we honor God through worship. So Jesus fundamentally in his point saying that we should honor him the same way we honor the Father, Jesus is commanding your worship. And if you want to believe Jesus isn't an idolater, because worshipping that which isn't God is idolatry, you're going to say that Jesus is claiming to be God here. So the prophets actually do give us the Trinity and Christology through Scripture. But that's just the end of the debate. Mansur, it was a pleasure discussing with you, man.
Okay,
It was
nice
a simple
talking to you.
debate.
But as
It
you
was
said,
nice talking to you.
there were things that you introduced in your concluding statement, which is not really the sensible thing to do, because I would not be able to respond to them, because I agreed I'm not going to bring any new points. Because when you make your concluding statements, you don't bring any new points for your opponents to counter and respond. But that's what you did. Maybe that's a Christian strategy. But anyway, there's no point for me to respond to them anyway. But as we realize, what can you do? If people are mental barrier, there's nothing can help you. But believe in Allah, that will save you from the hellfire. That is what's needed.
That they can honor God by making him suffering in sufferings. Then how can we make? How can we change his mindset?
That's it.